Hey guys, welcome to 22 Minutes, the official podcast of 22 Sierra Coffee Company. This is a new format. This is something new for us. We're going to do it official here. Watch, actually, this is how official we're going to be. I think I even have look at, boom. I can't really see it that well. Maybe I'll have to make a better one. But look, we've got, where is it? This side? We've got a nice little logo up there. We are in the 21 Gun Studios, if it looks familiar to you. But yeah, this is the studio that we're going to use. Tonight's show is with Burn Pits 360, Rosie Torres, who is, I believe, a co-founder and executive director of that organization. During OEF and OIF wars, government contractors burned up to 227 metric tons of hazardous waste at forward operating bases using jet fuel in large ground pits. Items burned included batteries, medical waste, amputated body parts, plastic, ammunition, human waste, animal carcasses, rubber, chemicals, and more. Exposure to these toxins have caused traumatic impact on the lives of service veterans and their families. Some of the devastating health conditions suffered by veterans exposed include neurological disorders, pulmonary disease, sorry, I looked away for a second. Rare forms of cancer and many unexplained symptoms. There have been thousands of deaths resulting from invisible wounds of war. Burn Pits 360 is the only 501(c) nonprofit organization to offer an independent burn pit exposure registry in which family members can record the names of warriors who served the nation but have passed away due to illnesses from toxic injury. They are entirely dedicated to improving post-deployment health outcomes for current and former military personnel, especially those who are suffering from emerging, complicated, or unexplained post-deployment health concerns arising from service in our post 9/11 wars. So it looks like it's going to be a cool show, and we are waiting for Miss. Oh, I believe I see her here, so we're going to pull her up. Hey, Rosie, I don't know how much of that you heard. I was just reading basically the overall background. Oh, excellent. Did I do all right? I'm always trying to read better. That's my goal. Well, it's not. I guess that sounds silly for someone that. Thank you. I guess it sounds silly for someone who's not in the broadcasting world. By read, I mean do these live reads where you actually have to read and then do all the other work at the same time. We're starting to do ads on the other podcasts, and it's just a tricky thing to do. It's a tricky thing to sound normal while you're reading something that it's not really natural sounding. So thank you for coming on the show. Let's start off with a little background about yourself. Tell us who you are and where you came from.
Yeah, my name is Rosie Torres. I'm originally from San Antonio. I moved to Robstown in 2005. Got married to my husband. I worked at the VA 23 years, and he at the time worked for Texas State Police, and so we moved here, relocated to Robstown, which is 2 hours south of San Antonio.
Okay. I'm a big fan of Texas. We have been for years threatening to move over there. Actually, we were really close. We were like almost pulling the trigger right before the housing market went crazy to move over to the, I guess, Woodlands, North Houston area. I've just always been a big fan of Texas. I like to ask where people are from because I think, people forget, right? We think we're all Americans, and we are, but we forget our country is so big that there's cultures within the general culture of America. In what ways did you grow up in Texas?
Right.
Okay. In what ways did growing up? Okay. In what ways did growing up in Texas shape who you became as an adult, as a person?
I think what really shaped me wasn't just living in one of the states with the highest veteran population.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just being around I come from a family of 9 children, so the majority of my brothers served in the military, and then like I said, San Antonio is a military city, so it really just shaped who I became as in my adult life, and in all the advocacy work that I've done and continue to do. Like, definitely large, deeply embedded in our culture, and
Sure.
and just again, part of the culture is the big military community that I lived in. So
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
I think I warned you. I like to go deep with these things. Who is the
Yeah,
most
no, I love
influential?
it.
I like to dig out who people are. What is or who is the most influential person in your life growing up and why?
My mother. May she rest in peace, you know?
Yeah.
Why, just the resilience that she had to take care of 9 children and really just give up, actually both my parents, but just give up so much of herself, right? That selfless service, that resilience, that determination. My brother died at a young age, and so it really took its toll on her health, and that's eventually what was a big cause of her death is just the heartache. But
Sure.
but throughout my years of being raised by such a wonderful warrior that she was, she really just inspired us to never give up, and really that like the norm was just like you don't, and my father too, right? Was you just don't sit back and let life happen. Like you have to be proactive and keep going, and you don't don't ever feel so defeated that you can't get back up on your 2 feet. So the norm was like she never just gave up on anything, and she just kept fighting. She was such a fighter
Yeah.
and such a warrior that she truly is my hero. And I'm still to this day, I say to people and to my children, if I could just be a fourth of the person that she was, like it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
she was so well rounded, right? Like with everything, patience, diplomacy, everything.
sure. Well, I think I'm very cognizant just because of I hate to use the term elders, but the way my elders treated me growing up, as I'm now in my middle age and I do things, I'm always thinking back to the people in my life. So I think it's important. And I'm very cognizant how I act around my children or my nieces and nephews, because it is important, even though things might seem like trivial at one point, especially for a child. It actually, you are setting the seeds to who these people are going to be when they grow up. So
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's, yeah.
No,
Okay. Oh,
you're
go ahead.
right. Absolutely. No, I was just gonna say absolutely. Like I just want to touch on one last thing there that
Sure.
I tell my children, and like for what you just pointed out on, um, I said you would be doing such a disservice and dishonor to your ancestors generations back, because everything they built was for this day today. And if
Absolutely.
you give up and don't honor them that way, then it would all just have been a waste of time for them. So honor them by continuing that legacy. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
You read my brain as I was writing these questions, and I guess maybe that means I wrote them correctly. But the next one is: are you familiar with the butterfly effect? So the idea is,
No.
a butterfly in North Carolina flaps his wings and there's a negligible wind, but that wind can cause a cyclone in Bangladesh, right? It's like one small event leads to a big event. Considering Burn Pits 360, the work you guys are doing, the organization in of itself, what do you think was that first inconsequential thing that made it grow to what it is today?
I think it's that, like my childhood, right? Like my father, he was born in Zacatecas, Mexico. Like he came from a very deep rooted kind of like, you don't know, it's black or white. There's no in between, and there's no
Sure.
magenta. There's no nothing. Like it's this or that. And then it was always for him like no, like we're not gonna just sit back and you don't get to choose. Like it's you just keep going, pressing forward. So I think those values that I was raised with, when I saw my husband just so deeply affected by something that was like the unknown, uncharted territory, I just sort of knew at that moment, like there has to be more than this. Like this, a Facebook page isn't gonna cut it.
Right.
And so I think my years of being at the VA, 23 years working in the bureaucracy and the red tape and all those things, like I'm like, we have to take this and craft it so that even though it is uncharted territory, like we have to we have to create our own space, and it's going to take a lot. I don't know how much it's going to take, because I think I was even asked that question one time, like did you ever think the day would come where the president would be talking about this issue? I'm like, I don't think we ever sat around the table. I think we ever sat around the table and discussed, oh, I wonder when that day will happen. Like, we're living it. This is
Yeah,
our life. Like, people don't sit around and collect the salary. Like, people are living it. It's their life. Like, now they're impacted, and now they're using that energy and time whatever time they have left to advocate. So yeah, I think it was a combination of all of it.
okay. Again, you must have read my questions, because my next one was, what's it like? And, politics aside, I mean, to have the president of the United States to mention the project. Did he mention Burn Pits 360 directly, or just the issue of burn pits? And how did that feel?
No, just the issue. Yeah. Well, he did have one of our advocates as his guest, right?
Okay.
Danielle Robinson, uh, the late Heath Robinson's wife. Like, she was selected, and we submitted names and did the whole shebang with Jon Stewart and all the backdoor stuff that had to happen to make that
Hmm.
happen. But it was amazing. Like, when we heard that it was actually going to be put on, the talking points, it was going to be part of the speech. I think it didn't really hit me like till the other day. Like, I think yesterday we had a meeting and I started tearing up. But that moment when I saw Danielle on the screen and I heard the president talking about it, like, I was, we weren't able to be there, but we were in the hotel room in Washington, because we had like a series of events, and I was just like in the hotel room clapping. I'm like, yes, yes, Danielle. It was so surreal and so of a proud moment, right, for all the people we've lost along the way. So it was very emotional, but yeah, a proud
Sure.
moment.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I want to go back actually for a second, and I realize there's a lot of civilians, first responders, other people other than military veterans that are patrons. I guess it's the word you use for 22 Sierra, or who listen and watch us. What is a burn pit, and kind of explain the background of what that is?
Yeah, right. Because not everyone knows, right? Not everyone served. Um, a burn pit is, an open area at a forward operating base during wartime, where they dug a hole in the ground, pretty much, and some of those burn pits were uh, 10 acres in size, right? And that's like 10 football fields. So if you can imagine,
Yeah, it's
and
big.
in those pits, um, pretty much like in a city where we live, we segregate our trash safely according to EPA, OSHA, all the laws that are in place. Not during wartime, right? Like, those things weren't done. Like, human waste, hazardous waste, things from the hospital, blown up Humvees, amputated body parts from like whatever was waste from the hospitals where surgeries happen, unused pharmaceuticals, car paint cans, computers, whatever, anything and everything, plastic water bottles. And you have to think, um, during war back in those years, there weren't Baskin Robbins and Starbucks and all these other restaurants on base, and so you generate more trash because you had a lot of the styrofoam and plastics and things like that. So all of that burned in a 10-acre pit, doused with JP8, which is jet fuel,
Hmm.
24 hours a day, you know, all year long. Inhaling, eating, living, running, just basically like what you do at home. Like, right, you go for a jog and then you go work, but all of this surrounded by a black plume of toxic smoke
Yeah.
that you inhaled, ingested, and lived around during a whole deployment.
Do you know? I'm sure there's some sort of data out there, but how much exposure does it take till you have symptoms? Because I assume you might not even smell it, right? You've got these chemicals that are at a minute part per billion, but say it's 1,000 times higher than OSHA would allow in a workplace. How much
And it was.
exposure? Yeah, exactly. How much of that exposure does it take before people start having symptoms, or is it just, you know, some people have symptoms, some people don't?
Yeah, look, I mean, by looking at our registry data over the last 12 years, like you have people that it all has to do with genetics too, right? And then
Sure.
take into consideration how far did you work? Did you work at the burn pits? Did you work by near the burn pits? How far? And where did you live? And there's a lot of factors involved. But I think generally, if you look at like the National Registry Database and the EPA, the ASDTR, it could be hours. It could be minutes, I think,
Wow.
and it just depends what kind of damage it would cause your body, right? But
Yeah.
what we have seen through our that real-time access to real-time data is that some people were medevaced out because they developed leukemia, or, rashes, and just cancer, right?
Sure.
And for some, it was the latency period was a year. For some it's 5, for some it's 10. It could be up to 20. We don't know. But every individual is different. Genetics, body chemistry, everything. We just don't know who had what exposure, and I don't think we'll ever know. But what we do know is that DoD declassified air samplings, and that is how the VA created the toxic exposure letter that identifies those dioxins, and that a lot of them were above the meg. So, there's just a lot of conflicting
Sure.
messaging around the issue.
And I can tell you it's certainly because I work in medicine in the real world. And, not just with burn pits, but toxic environment plays havoc on people's bodies. I can't tell you how many patients I've had in my career where I don't know what's causing it. I mean, I assume it's something that they've been exposed to at some point in their life, but the symptoms match what you were talking about, neurological symptoms. Is there anything like unexplained depression, anxiety, mental health issues that go
Oh,
on there?
so you have autoimmune diseases, you have,
Okay,
cardiovascular, you have brain cancers, very rare, lung cancers, cancer of the throat, cancer of the sinus. And most importantly, what we've discovered is something called toxic encephalopathy, which is, damage to the brain
sure,
due to inhalation of like the effects of combustion burning, right? So what we discovered, like even through my own husband's brain scans, is that it's damage to the brain very similar to like NFL players with CTE.
wow,
So that leads us to believe like that's why we have the 22 suicides a day. We
sure,
went and
yeah,
got the scan because you're talking about a police, former state police, former Army captain commander, graduated, summa cum laude of his class with memory loss, an attempted suicide, and it just none of it made sense. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because you had you know, uh, the cognitive function was impaired, and all these things. And I was like, we need answers, and so that really gave us a good snapshot of like what it is we're dealing with. So absolutely, just like with the World Trade Center, same thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we're trained in the Western model of medicine, which is think inside the box. What do the books tell you? What does the past tell you? And they really, and maybe they're starting to change it now. I've been to PA school in over a decade, but maybe they're starting to tell people to think outside the box. But I can tell you with certainty that a lot of people that I treat, if we do an anti-inflammatory, if we get their or regimen, meaning not anti-inflammatory medicines, but anti-inflammatory diet, detoxification, vitamin D, all these essential things that our body needs, we can sometimes not cure, but reduce these symptoms. And it's like, wow, you take a human being and you take them out of the toxic environment and suddenly they start to feel better. Amazing. Who'd have think of that? Um, I want to go over something too. I love mission statements for companies because I like things in small bites. The mission statement for burn pits is to reintegrate, restore, and build resilience through facilitating unmet needs to warriors and their families through outreach, advocacy, education, and research. Um, when I see the term reintegration, I think the need to bring someone back to a group, right? Someone that's been removed from a group. In what ways do people who suffer the effects of burn pits find themselves on the outside, or not ostracized, maybe isolated from their group?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of individuals, you're so disconnected after, leaving the military, and then you begin to have these onset of symptoms and illnesses that, you start to question yourself. Like, the doctors in the civilian, not in the civilian sector, but mostly in VA and DoD. And there's one doctor specifically, Dr. Morris over at BAMSI, who implied that a lot of these pulmonary issues were somatoform diseases, that it was just all manifested in their mind, that they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't breathe because of anxiety issues or things like that. So for a lot of veterans, I think they feel alone. They feel, uh, should I reach out, to my brothers and sisters? Who else out there is going through these things? Is it just me? But when we bring everyone together to begin to understand their own health and the issue in general, it really, validates uh, the issues that they're battling and facing. And so for a lot of people, I mean, it could be, a little embarrassing, or like it's not a physical visible wound. So you don't want to be labeled as, you know, a cry, what I mean, whatever it is
Yeah,
that
no,
they're
no, no,
labeled people
100%.
as
You're
in the
right.
military.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So like a malinger or cry, just someone who's weak, right? You don't want to be labeled as that, because it's not something that society embraces, right? You're not the poster child for any cause or support. So it's the invisible wounds are just probably the worst thing, because, and I know my husband has some friends who are amputees, and they're like, man, you've got this lung disease, you got toxic brain injury, like, man, like, at least I know what I'm dealing with. You're like a ticking time bomb. Like, it
Yeah.
could be cancer tomorrow for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just such a challenging thing.
Yeah, I know all about that. I was medically discharged for, or retired for PTS and TBI. And same thing. I mean, I went through probably a decade without telling anybody about it. I got, this kind of follows that path, because I ended up getting matched with a service dog. And one of the biggest things that the service dog does, to me, anyways, is he advocates for those unseen injuries, because it's so important. Isolation is the first step to bad things happening to veterans. And when people see the dog, it's funny. If someone sees someone in a wheelchair, they don't say, "Hey, why do you have a wheelchair? What happened to you?" No one says anything like that. But when they see a service dog,
Right.
they come up and they start talking to you about it, and that's fine. I knew that was going to happen,
Why do
and
you
it
have a
helped.
service dog? Yeah.
Say again. I couldn't hear you.
No, I said you're right. People that's the first question they ask is like, why do you have a service dog? What does he do for
Exactly.
you? What does she do for you?
Exactly. And it just starts the conversation, and the conversation is the first step in getting these things out. I mean, that the conversation with Burn Pits 360 is bringing this stuff into the State of the Union address. So you have to talk about it. Yeah. The Burn Pit 360 says restoration is also part of its mission. I guess if I can preface that, to me, restoration would mean getting back to baseline, which is a tricky thing, because well, take people with an amputated leg. There's really no baseline. You can't get that leg back. But what is restoration for you guys? Is it getting healthy? Is it getting answers? Sometimes people just want answers. What is the meaning of that?
Yeah, I mean, it could mean a lot of things for different, it could mean different things for many people. We also have part of our programs that we now run, and we could get a little bit deeper into that. But when we were gifted the building for our national headquarters here in the little town that we live in,
Yeah.
we decided to open up the building, as something called the Warrior Support Center, where veterans and their families can come, and there's like Xboxes and PS4s, and there's computers, and we do all kinds of stuff as families together. We have like a haircut for Heroes Day, where barbers come out and cut hair and whatever. We have rec marches. We do lots of stuff. So I think the restoration part for many families that I've spoken to that come out to our center is just restoring their soul with being around that camaraderie and being
Sure.
around their brothers and sisters and feeling whole again, feeling like, okay, I can go somewhere where I can go just play Xbox with my kids, or I want to just sit here and have lunch or whatever. So I think it's like restoring self
Mm-hmm.
through being around that community, right?
Sure.
In whatever event it is, if it's an event or if it's just being there to learn about toxic exposure or whatever. I think it means different things to different people. But for me, when we said, well, let's do the center, I had to dig deep into like, what would it mean to my family? Like, what do I want? Do I want a pair of socks and a koozie, or tickets to a basketball game? Like what? Like, no, we need impactful programs that are life changing and that will restore you and give you purpose, right? Because it's a little cliche. Like people will be like, oh, we sent a family to a football game, or we sent it. Yeah, but what happens after the football game?
Sure.
What happens after the baseball game, right?
Yeah.
So, although those are nice gestures, but we needed something more. So I think restoration, like for my family, means how do we stay connected? How does the restoration take place? And we feel like that happens through a continuation of like programs and events and just staying connected.
Sure. And then, of course, the last thing is resilience. What does resilience mean to you and mean to burn pits?
I think the resilience is like, the fact that we've leaned on each other as families impacted, individuals impacted, um, leaning on each other's wisdom, knowledge, experience, and just really proving that, you know, that anything can be accomplished if you believe in the mission. You are part of the mission. The mission is defined by your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's how you continue that resilient mindset. And I may be wrong. I don't know. I didn't serve in the military, but what I can say is like being the wife of someone impacted, it sucks. Like war sucks, and we say the war that followed us home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had to look at war in the face. I have argued with war. I've fought with war. And I say that in the sense of like, I know who I married, but sometimes the person I'm battling is not my husband. It's war.
Yeah.
It's really hard to explain unless you've been there and you've come back and you've lived it, and you have the like you said, like the PTS and all the shit that comes with war. Like, excuse my language,
No,
right?
it's
But
fine.
it happened the other day, and my husband said to me, it was one of those dark days, right? And he's like, I think you're gonna have to finish this by yourself. I don't think I can do this. And I was like, no, no, no. You know what I mean? Like I let him finish saying what
Sure.
he had to say because he's not one to just give up. But your body's tired, you're sick, and you don't have answers, and there's no health care, and there's all this, political bullshit that comes with how they're being treated. And so I had to say, like, I'm gonna let this finish, and then I'm gonna talk to whatever this is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and face it eye to eye. And I said, I know who I married, I know who I walked down the aisle with, I know who you are. This right here is not okay. Like, so it sucks, but it's that's resilience, right? Is like reminding each other, like, you're gonna have those days, but hang in there.
Sure. Well, yeah, the needs of military veterans, first off, they very rarely tell people what their needs are, which is tough. And I can only imagine
Mm-hmm.
being mil spouse or the spouse of a veteran, not understanding that what do you call it? That culture of not wanting to look weak, even if it's not. I mean, most civilians will say that's not weak, but you don't understand. Like in the club, you want to be the toughest, the deadliest, you know what I mean? And when you come back to
Right.
the civilian world, that's a very, very difficult thing to do, to reintegrate with. So if someone's listening and they're like, I have migraines, I have paresthesias, I have balance issues, or whatever, or maybe they had leukemia 3 years ago that they fought. How can they contact your organization, and what can you guys do for groups like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've created a resource page on our website. We've taken like 12 years of work and really decided like let's craft something that people can download and use to navigate their healthcare, to file claims. We took our scientific advisory board members, these are doctors, researchers, our legal experts, and created documents online that will help them. One of them is a toxic exposure table that was taken from VA's own policy regulation, um, regarding the dioxins. And so what we did is we had our doctors break it up into a table, according to the National Registry of Chemicals and Toxins. And so we had them identify like which organs are affected, what are the impacts, the health impacts and effects of inhaling those specific dioxins. And so that table will help you when you go see your doctor and just say like, look, I was at the FOB and here is the toxic exposure table that'll tell you like these are the dioxins I was exposed to, right?
Right.
Um, and then there's another letter that we uploaded that says symptoms and illnesses. And so we've taken what was self-reported through our registry and sort of identified like those top symptoms. So those are on there too. I'm sure there are more that we need to add, but those will sort of help kind of ease your mind that like, yes, there are others self-reporting these things too. And it's common in that, cohort of people exposed. So yeah, they can reach out to us through our website. There's a 1-800 number. We'll help direct them in whatever path they need. It just depends. Some people need, legal representation, and so we'll tell them like, call whoever you feel the need to call, or reach out to a VSO. If it's healthcare, specialized healthcare, we'll direct them to Dr. Miller, Dr. Zema, Dr. Meehan over National Jewish, just whoever we know has been working on the issue. So yeah, it's different for many people, but definitely lots of resources online people can download and use now and not wait on the VA.
Sure. Yeah, because that can always be tricky. And then I think I read recently there was a few more cancers, maybe 10 more that you guys got. I want to say added to the list, but this seems like it's an evolving science, which I guess is what science is. But you guys are constantly making inroads to recognition of these ailments that are rare and seem to have a direct correlation with these exposures. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Um, we the PACT Act has 23 presumptions, to include, glioblastoma, brain cancer, lung disease, all these things. But they're meal piecing it. They're like, here's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And for some reason, we feel that there's science for these cancers, but not science for those cancers yet. So
Sure.
it
Yeah.
really is just ridiculous. It's cut up, chopped up, and put together however they want to serve it. Um, and to us it's not enough. Like, I think they want to appease the population by saying like, look, we're doing something and we're being transparent, but for us, just we're going to keep pressing the senators to get the bill on the president's desk, period.
You've explained a lot how you help other people. How can people help you specifically?
Yeah, so what we've done in the past years, we developed a program called the Warrior Hope Network. And what we identified, through our work is that the veterans suffering from pulmonary issues and just all kinds of issues resulting from toxic exposure was that there are, different healthcare modalities that will help the veteran. And one of them, specifically that we've, put funding behind is, well, several things, but many veterans who are impacted just cannot have access to an oxygen concentrator that would give them a better quality of life, that will allow them to go outside with their kids, travel, things like that. And so we've been purchasing oxygen concentrators for those veterans that have their prescription, get it cleared through their doctor. We provide scholarships to buy those concentrators. And so that's amazing because it's really a life-changing, life-saving tool that gives them a better quality of life. And then secondly, we have the hyperbaric chambers that we are providing for veterans. We're doing 12 this year, along with the Grunstyle Foundation. We're awarding 12 in-home oxygen chamber tanks for veterans.
Those are really cool. I've read some data on it. It's just interesting. People tend to feel really good when they get out of the, and they're not. They sound scary, but sometimes it just looks like a tent in your house. They're not, they're not these massive, expensive structures. But in fact, I think a lot of these athletes, these amateur athletes, have them in their house to. I don't know what it does. I might have to look into that.
It heals your body. It heals your health. Like we send several veterans to Dr. Hendricks in Arizona through Healing Arizona Vet. She treats a lot of SEALs, SF, people with exposure. And I promise you that those veterans we sent there came back completely, different,
Sure.
restored. And so what we learned is that it'll heal them, but it's needed to be continuous, like for the rest of their lives, right? It's not
Sure.
something that, like for me and you, that we would benefit from like 60 dives and then call it. But for them, it's for the rest of their lives. But it definitely does improve their quality of life. So I know a veteran who's has constrictive bronchiolitis and whose numbers improved from being in the chamber. So we're doing the oxygen concentrators, we're doing the oxygen therapy, the hyperbaric chambers, and then we just did a visit to BioAccelerator Stem Cell in Medellin, Colombia.
Yeah.
And we're helping to put money behind that too, to get veterans to get treated with stem cell.
Yeah, it's a shame. Again, I'm not 100% knowledgeable about that, but people do have to travel all over the world to sometimes get some of these treatments. We're seeing a lot of headway being made with psychedelics. And that, people have to go through, various organizations. One thing that's really amazed me about the veteran community and the post 9/11 specifically, but I guess, I'm including all veterans, is if there is a lack of resource, then we make that resource. Organizations like Burn Pits 360 is a perfect example of that. Another group we work with, the Reverent Warriors. These are groups that think way outside the box, and they provide the answers versus, having to wait for a bureaucrat to strike his pen and give you the answer that he deems fit. So great job on what you guys are doing. I think you guys are just at the tip of the iceberg at this point, because there's a lot of work to do. Hey, one of my favorite ways to support you guys is to head over to your site, burnpits360.org/shop, and you can buy some 22 Sierra coffee. And I'm glad that we're working with you. Yeah. You can also, we do sell that one. It's called Gaslighting the Warfighter. Yeah. Well, it's good.
And I'll
coffee,
be honest, when we started to push the coffee out, I hadn't tasted it yet. So when everyone started to buy it, they're like, "Damn, this is some good coffee." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it is."
Yeah, we have some industry secrets.
Thank God. Yeah. It's amazing coffee, like totally.
And it's I've almost become like evangelical about the coffee. I'll stand in line and be like, "Hey, I see that you're wearing a competitor's brand coffee shirt or whatever. Have you ever tried 22 Sierra coffee?" and then I feel silly because I'm like, it's really good, and you know, it being associated with 22 Sierra, they're like, okay, you know, of course you're going to say that, but no, it actually is really good. So I'm so glad we
Yeah.
partnered with you, and yeah, any help that we can get, you guys are doing fantastic. I looked, and 22 minutes seems to always do this. We've doubled our time. I apologize. I know you're out running errands. But yeah, is it
No worries.
absolutely? Is there any last place or any last things you want to say to people that are watching? I think I just said your website, burnpits360.org. Anything else you want to add to
Right.
that?
No, I mean, look, just stay tuned on all our social media channels. We will be taking some veterans up to Capitol Hill here in a few weeks to, as IVA has said it in the past, they storm the hill.
Yeah,
Um, we'll be up there with all the top, veterans organizations, DAV, American Legion, Reserve Organization of America, everyone, right?
yeah.
Wounded Warrior Project, we're all going to be up there with John and doing a last push for this bill. So call your senators. I don't care who your senator is, what state you live in, and ask them to pass the Honor Your Pact Act. Like people's lives are riding on this. So that's what I can say. If you want to, make an impact and provide these life saving modalities for our nation's heroes, you can go make support us on our website. There's a link there too.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it'll make headway, and that's a resource that people always overlook. Call and write your senators, and I do it a lot. I swear I'm on a list. They're probably like, "Oh, here comes Kevin again," but it gets. I
Right.
mean, that's their point. Their point is they represent you, and you have to utilize that representation. You got to call them. But yeah, you're absolutely right with that, and I hope you guys do really well up in Washington. Maybe I'll take a trip up there. When is it?
Yeah, we should be there in about 2 to 3 weeks. So we're definitely going to push the date out with the good notice time, so
Yeah,
we're not at the last minute because we're always waiting on them to tell us like, oh, this is the date we can do it.
yeah.
And then veterans feel like, hey, you didn't let us know, but we really honestly they let us know like at the last minute. So
Oh,
we
really?
really want to mobilize vets to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll definitely let you know. We'd love to
Okay.
be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rosie, for hopping on the show, and I'm looking forward to
Thank you
working
for
with you
having me.
guys through the coffee company.
Hey, it's an honor. Thank you for having us.
All right, take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
And that's the show. I think we're going to try to do these once a week. We'll take a look. Schedules are crazy, and getting people to actually commit to a time during a week is pretty tricky, but we're going to do our best. We got some, according to my notes here, we have a few really good interviews coming up. I'm looking forward to talking with these people. So stay tuned. Head over to 22sierracoffeecompany.com, and we have a whole section that is dedicated to our partners where we're raising like Reverend Warriors, our own Canopy parachuting team, Grunt Style, and now Burn Pits. And then, of course, we have our just regular blends, which proceeds from that also go to nonprofits. So head over to 22sierracoffee.com, and we will see you guys next time.